Just trying to take this picture down. Bear with me. Welcome back to my show. Good morning. You can call me Swamp Rose or Kiki or whatever you'd like. And thank you for being here today. So just wanted to welcome the people that we have in the live chat. We have Jeremiah and Crispy and Kitty laughing. Pauline, Dean, I'm going to say your name right this time. Anna Melodies. Marie-Française. Jeff, I hope you're still here. Jeff sent me a picture of a coffee mug I need to get that says unmute on it. I'm like, yes, I'll take that one, please. And Cyber Ninja's here in D Square. Anyway, I just wanted to say hi to you guys before we got started. So I don't think this is going to be a long live stream, so I just want to make sure I'm giving shout outs. And I hope the weather's nice where you are. We have a total break in the heat today. It's beautiful here in Cape Cod. I hope the weather's nice where you are. So if you drop your city in the chat, we'll give it a shout out. And so I have kind of a short program today, but I always say that and it ends up being 3 hours. But there's one main thing I want to focus on today, which is kind of continuing this profiling that we've been doing on Bryan Kohberger for like the last few live streams. And I have some new information that I wanted to add that I actually haven't read before. And I think it fits really nicely into the things we were talking about. The last time we left off with our profiling, we were talking about Bryan's friend Bree, and we were listening to an interview she did with Daniel. So I'm going to add to that today. Mikey actually sent me something that I've never seen before, which I think will fit nicely into this profile. I want to kind of bring together a lot of the things we've talked about and make it cohesive for like people who might not have seen the other things that we were talking about. So I'm going to add a bunch of things together, and I'm going to work backwards today in the profile. So I'm going to start at WASU, and then I'm going to start at WASU, and then I'm going to work backwards to his high school. So I'm going to bring up a variety of things too. So I called this the female paradox because in the mainstream media, we've basically seen one narrative pushed to us. And on its surface, like I pretty much believed what I read too, because it seemed like there were a lot of people coming out vilifying Bryan or making him sound like he was a creep. But the interesting thing is when you go back and you read the documents, people who are giving firsthand accounts or something that has like a supporting document to it, it really doesn't have that unfavorable light. Excuse me. And some of the people who have gone on the record saying negative things about BK either decided to remain anonymous or they were not female. And I'm not saying that their opinion doesn't matter, but if we're talking about like how he gets along with females, it's you're hearing it from a male perspective. So why don't we listen to what the females who have gone on record saying something about him, what they have to say? So I shouldn't just say that. We should also listen to people who like want to firsthand go on the record, not anonymously say something through a news source. Like that's a big deal when you put your name on something. So what I wanted to start with is giving you a soundbite from a kid named Benjamin who went to WASU, and he was one of BK's students. And so we're going to listen to what he has to say because it's a little bit different than other things that I've heard about BK. And then we're going to move down to Cassie, who is also one of his students, and she did a podcast in the same series. And actually, I think like everything I'm going to show you today was sent to me by Mikey at some point. So please thank Mikey S. when you see him, or if you see him in the chat or the replay, tell him thank you for helping us create such great content. So I'd appreciate it. It's the free way you can help my channel. So I'm going to first bring up this podcast. I feel like this isn't going smoothly today. And this is just like a 1.5-minute clip. And if you want to go check out this podcast for yourself, this is the Idaho Massacre on Spotify, and this episode is called Face Your Fears. And I'm trying to see what episode number it is. I don't know. Okay, 2409. I feel like we're doing a really deep psychological profile today, you guys. So oops, I thought you could see that.
He was fairly quick to offer his opinion and thoughts, and he was always participating fairly eagerly in classroom discussions.
But Roberts also said Kohberger had an aura of academic arrogance about him. He would describe things in the most complicated way. Roberts also said Kohberger liked to brag about his dating life.
At one point, he just idly mentioned, I can go down to a bowl or a club and just have pretty much any lady I want.
Remember that, though, you guys?
Other classmates said Kohberger made inappropriate comments.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. And so there's two things you can glean from this. So the first one is, isn't that different than what we've heard from his other male students at WASU? And I wonder, like, why is it that the females speak differently? Now, the podcast does go on, but I'm not going to play it because the following people don't give their names and they report anonymously. They also are talking about like major triggering subjects, which, so I'm not going to use it as like something that we're going to use for the psychological profile because it's not backed up by document enough. And so we heard that clip, which is different than what we're talking about in the media. Like I said, oh, hey, AR, good to see you. So the theme, just to remind you how I'm doing the paradox. So that does get that comment down. Doesn't that kind of feel like a paradox to the narrative we've been told just in that one clip? Since when does BK think he can have any girl in the room? He's like 28 years old. Like he's not like a teenager, So I think that that's interesting. And then I'm going to move to Cassie, and I'm actually going to play you I summarized all of Cassie's podcast, and just for the sake of not reusing somebody else's content, I'm going to show you my summary of that. I have so many tabs open. Okay. So this video was really popular. It's called WSU Student Cassie. It's just going over the entire podcast. This is a really recent podcast. And again, it was brought to my attention by Mikey, but it came out, honestly, less than a month ago. So it's something, if you haven't heard it yet, make sure you go to Spotify, same series, and check it out. But anyway. So what are we listening for here? Let me set this up for you. This is a different account than what we've heard from the anonymous females coming forward and saying things about Bryan. This is a female who's willing to put her voice, put her name on a podcast, and this is what she observed. And it's so different than the people who are doing this anonymously. Please go listen to it for yourself. Maybe you'll surmise something different. But I just want to say who participated in it. So it was Stephanie Lydecker, Courtney Armstrong, Gabriel Costello, and it is produced by Sweater's View. Okay, so she started by his description, and she's going to go to his appearance and how she felt around him. So those are the subjects she's covering in this. Do a profile of BK, and it gets really interesting, actually. Before I get into this, I want to hook you. I want you guys to know like how interesting this is. I did take 2 quotes and wrote them down before we got started, because this is kind of a long review. So I want to make sure you know what you're going to hear out of this. So these are 2 quotes you're going to be interested in, direct quotes from the podcast. She said, when she was asked to describe him physically, she said he had a very clean look. He was always shaven. He had his hair done. He was always wearing sweaters and jeans. He always looked nice. He was tall, white, dark hair, very skinny, slim. He had a slim fit. He just always seemed like he was just there. He wasn't interacting with others. He was kind of just there. And I thought that was interesting because if you remember in the new book that Bloom put out, he said that one of the qualities that other people were saying about BK was that when he first got there, he was like overly introductive, and that it wasn't like in a friendly way, it was in an awkward way. And that's just kind of contradictory to what this one student is saying, who was close to him and saw him on a daily basis. She said that people have made him out to be a creep who had nothing going for him. But this is her exact quote. She says, but like he was almost done with his life. He was at his goal. He had so much of a future ahead of him, and said that he didn't, to say that he didn't is straight up lies, is what she said. It's not like he's a weird outsider dude who didn't have anything going for him. She said he was at his goal. He was at a place where they all wanted to be. And she said she couldn't even imagine being where he was. He had a future, and she really wanted to impress that. So I'm reading that to you because that account of BK kind of flies in the face of the anonymous source, you know, in Bloom's book, or one of them at least. So let me continue with my review of the podcast. So Cassie said for the first few weeks he was very silent, and Cassie said he was silent, but he was noticeable, and she often watched him. And she really emphasized that. She's saying she didn't say he was attractive, but she was saying he was noticeable. And compared to the other TAs, they were quite engaged, but he was kind of not quite as open as a TA. He wasn't into the class, and he seemed bored a lot of the time. That's my words, not hers. And he was kind of in his own little world, she said. So I want to pause right there. This is almost like a 6-minute clip that I'm showing you, but I want to clear something up right now. Again, this was something that Mikey sent over to me in this group of receipts. But I found this really interesting. When she's talking about the other TAs, I was always visualizing her talking about other men, like other men who were TAs. For some reason, I guess it was just sexism. I had that in my head, but she's not. These are the other TAs. Let me show you. And they're all female. Like even this one that has the DeSales, the WASU the Coug as their profile pic, and their name was actually South Korean, and I looked it up, and it means beautiful. So it is a female name, and it's a female given name. So all of his TAs that he worked with were female. And I bring that up because I think it is kind of important, because we are talking about this dynamic between what we've heard in the mainstream media and Bryan and females, the dynamic we've heard in the mainstream media, and then the dynamic when you actually go look at what is document and what firsthand people have said about him. So let's listen to the next 2 minutes of this, and then we'll move on to another receipt. The podcaster asked her what was noticeable about him because of the description I just read you. And she said that turn my page. She said basically it was his eyes. And she said that, when class got boring, it was a very intense class and there was a lot to take in. And when things started getting boring, her eyes just immediately went to BK. And so she didn't see him have any, a lot of friends in class. She said he was a closed off TA, meaning he was just, others were open, but he was more of, closed off. When I hear that, I interpret that as somebody who's kind of street smart. If you're closed off. I'm going to answer character analysis because I assumed all the TAs were men because I was thinking of BK. I was saying I was sexist. You're not just letting everybody in. You're waiting, to find the right people. But it's open to interpretation, I guess. She said she had office time with him. So she did office time with him personally twice. She even would have continued, but she said it just wasn't helpful because it was more of like a student group. It wasn't like one-on-one with him, although she said she could have had one-on-one instruction from him. It was a group setting. And everybody just kind of sat there quietly working on their projects. So it just wasn't for her. So she didn't go back, but she said she never felt awkward or uncomfortable. He would just keep to himself on his laptop. And then the podcaster asked her, well, did you have like a sixth sense or like a spidey sense about him? And she said, did you notice something was off or anything about him? And Cassie says, no. If they asked, was he just like an ordinary guy? And Cassie says, she never got that sense. And she said there was one incident where a student sat down next to her because it was a big class and nobody had assigned seats. So one day she sat down next to someone new, and the guy sat next to her, and he said, and it was her first time meeting her. She said, doesn't this guy kind of give you weird vibes? And then he repeated it, and he said to her, it's in his eyes. And but she said to her personally, she got no weird vibes. And she said the days leading up to the event, everything was ordinary. And she asked her, was there a difference in grading before and after the incident? And she said she did notice there was it seemed like he was better grading after the incident, but it wasn't like super. That part's irrelevant. And since I played that part and it's not part of what we're talking about right here, I will answer, because a lot of people said too, there could have been a reason why grading at that point was a little bit easier, because also they were after Thanksgiving break. It was the end of the term, that kind of thing. So, but that was not the point that we're getting at today. So if you could just focus your mind and just keep on thinking what Cassie said. So she got no sixth sense. She got no spidey sense about Bryan. She had no indicators. Oh my gosh, that still frame is so bad. Let me take that off. So she had none of these indicators that we kind of heard about in the mainstream media. And since we're going backwards, so if we're going to move from Wasu and what people have gone on the record saying about him there, let's go back to the next story we were talking about, which would be his time at DeSales University. And I feel that there's obviously back to the theme, the female paradox. I feel that the actual story maybe is a little bit different than the only one that we've been pushed. So when we think about his time at DeSales, there has been a couple students that were in a study group that came out and talked about him. And then there was somebody who owned a bar outside of the DeSales campus. There aren't a lot of people who went on record. And I have a feeling that DeSales instructed their students not to say much. But nonetheless, there was this one story, and I'm not going to read it. I brought the article up, but we've read it enough times on here. I'm just going to paraphrase it. So basically, a bar owner came out and he said, yes, Bryan frequented my bar, and basically he would come in and he would try to pick up women, and when it didn't go well, he would yell at them, or he didn't really specify. He said that he called them the B word, but they said that he had such a habit of it that they actually put him in their system. So when he came in to run his credit card, there was like a little warning: this guy, you know, can get whatever. He can get mouthy, I guess. So the last time that Bryan went into this bar, the owner confronted him and said, "Bryan, are we going to have a difficult time today or tonight?" And Bryan was on his first beer, and he looked at him like, "What are you talking about?" Like he had no idea. This is how the owner is describing it. And he finished his beer and he left, and he never came back, which probably, if that happened to any of you, you would never come back. And I've always thought it was somebody came out. I thought that's good. Somebody came out and put that on the record. But I always also kind of thought, if you worked at a bar, and there are drunk regulars who act like that, who aren't psychopaths. You know what I mean? Like it just kind of does sound like a drunk regular. And so I don't know if it's something you want to condemn someone for. It's something people noted. However, the theme is paradox, and we're talking about relationships, and people have actually spoke about this. And one of them was Bree, Bryan's childhood friend or high school friend. And she spoke on this on Daniel's show. And so I want to play a soundbite from that and hear what she has to say, because the soundbite I'm going to play you is pretty interesting, because it talks about what other people say about Bryan in the community and how they feel. And it transitions to how she feels about that story she read from the bar owner outside of DeSales. It's the only time I've heard anybody kind of push back on that. And I thought you guys would like to hear it too. Reddit has this, Jack says, the Reddit has a story about BK dismissal from a security job. Seems legit with net letters and names. Thanks. I'll definitely check it out. One thing is I haven't been able to get much history below like the age of 15. So that's as far back as we've really gone with our profile, but we're getting a lot of information. So let me pull up this. So again, the entire interview is on the Drunk Turkey show. And afterwards, when I edit this, I'll link it below so you can go watch it. It's an awesome interview. And when I played it, my live stream said they've never even heard this interview. And I had never heard it until a couple people forwarded it to me, Daniel and Michael, or Mikey. So anyway, let me play this for you. High school. And what's interesting is by doing this segment, we're kind of piggybacking off of the segment I did last week when we read all of BK's tap to tops. And I've gathered as much information from this interview about BK's, young life as I have from anywhere else. So it's a great resource if you hadn't heard it yet. So let me bring up Drunk Turkey Show. And hold on.
For the first time in more than 5.5 years, we finally tonight have a
Arrest of a suspected serial killer caught before he could strike again.
They dropped the ball, man. They said he went AWOL.
Oh, wait.
And he was a deserter, and nobody went to look for him.
Today is not a day to celebrate.
Sorry, guys.
With the arrest of Richard M. Allen of Delphi.
Okay, so of all the parts of this, well, I keep saying that for every part. For all the parts of this interview, I do think that the live chat is going to be very interested in this next segment. It is her putting her foot down and speaking very clearly about the impressions of the people where they're from. And I'll call this segment, this is the last segment of the interview, it's called People Are Shocked. And I'm just kind of, stepping back and hearing what Bree has to say and processing it all. So.
Possible involvement?
Not so much possible involvement. I have talked to some friends from high school who was in his class or have been with him outside of school. And they're just as shocked. Most people are still processing. I think the people who are already giving him a guilty sentence or just Bryan's guilty, blah, 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 are people who didn't know him or people who didn't really, everyone is just following what the media says or the FBI caught him, so we're all done and, you know, that's it.
Right.
But I think people who genuinely knew him are like, what the heck? Like, what in the world just happened? Like, she actually is listening now and she gave me permission. Somebody who worked with him more recently than not, she's fantastic. And she just said that she is shocked and really upset. And I think that's what everybody is feeling who knew Bryan or had some sort of relationship with him. And I think a lot of people are still on the fence if he is guilty or not, because just the Bryan that we knew, it's like, what? That's really out of character.
Right. So when you hear the stories that
we were wanting that,
been with him outside of school, and they're just as shocked. Most people are still processing. I think the people who are already giving him a guilty sentence or just Bryan's guilty, blah, 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 are people who didn't know him or people who didn't really, everyone is just following what the media says or the FBI caught him, so we're all done and, you know, that's it.
Right.
But I think people who genuinely knew him are like, what the heck? Like, what in the world just happened? Like, she actually is listening now and she gave me permission. Somebody who worked with him more recently than not, she's fantastic. And she just said that she is shocked and really upset. And I think that's what everybody is feeling who knew Bryan or had some sort of relationship with him. And I think a lot of people are still on the fence if he is guilty or not, because just the Bryan that we knew, it's like, what? That's really out of character.
Right. So when you hear the stories that potentially there was somebody that was described as him harassing a waitress, calling her the B word, that doesn't sound typical of the Bryan that you knew.
This isn't me.
Nah, Bryan was too quiet to like cause commotion like that. But I do know, like any human being, I want to say this absolutely respectfully. I think everybody is just taking bits and pieces from bad moments of Bryan's life and are trying somehow to correlate it with the story or with his actions now. And that's really hard for me personally, because it's like, I know I had really bad moments. I've had very dark moments, but it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to like kill my husband or my kids or off myself or something. It's just like, dang, I wish these people didn't throw these bad parts about me. Like some guy said, because he's a heroin addict, it messed with his brain and he killed 4 people. And it's like, I don't think you understand how like recovery works. And like, if he only used heroin for like a year or two, there's people who've been on heroin for years, for decades, and get sober and they're fine. Like this guy used it and he was in his teens. He was healthy. I can't foresee him just clicking. I don't know.
Got you. And so I guess with my other question, I used the wrong word as far as involvement. What I meant was, and I think you answered it, as do you know anybody that feels like he could have done it? Like that aren't surprised that it's him, so to speak, you know, is perhaps somebody that's local or come out that you know, that you trust, that they've known him and their opinion, it could be that he may have done it.
I have talked to 1 or 2 people that definitely, how do I word this? They aren't necessarily surprised, but they are at the same time. They're like, what, Bryan? But that makes sense. And right. I'm like, where? I don't know. So yeah, there are some people that we went to high school with that are just like, he was such a weird kid. Like I saw him at the water fountain and he told me about his sister's goldfish and I thought he was so weird. Now he's a killer. And it's like, what?
Yeah, that's weird. What you guys have any? Yeah, we went over 30 minutes. I don't know, we're only going to keep you for 30. Jaime, Blue, do you have any questions before we let Bree go?
Well, my question was like her initial thoughts about when the news broke out that this could have been him. You know what I mean? But that's what I want to know. How she felt. Like, does she automatically dismissed it or not?
So
But,
very good.
yeah.
So I do want to say before we go, that is a great question. When I first found out, I'm a person of humor. I laugh at everything and everything. And it was actually from my friend in the trio. And I was like, LOL, what the fuck? Or I'm sorry for my language, what in the world?
Yeah.
And so I joked about it at first. And then like later on in the night, I was like, what? Like there's like, I'm grieving, but also processing. I do want to say, because I see a lot of questions. Do you think he's guilty? As a true crime fan, I have seen multiple cases play out all the time where they get the suspect, the FBI is involved, everything. And then you get to the very end and it's completely somebody different, or they don't find them guilty. And at this point in time, I have to stick with our justice system and say, like, you're innocent until proven guilty. Until I have the facts, and I don't mean facts as in people on Reddit trying to piece things together on one of their boards on their like walls. I mean like actual evidence from the case. Then to me, to this person, like, I don't necessarily think he's innocent, but I don't think he's guilty. I think we just have to wait and see how it pans out. And I'm not going to sit here and trash somebody that in my brain has always made me laugh, who always made me feel safe, because it's indifference for me as of right now.
Yeah,
for sure. For sure. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, the justice system is the way it is because for a reason. Everybody is innocent until proven guilty. He'll have his day in court. He is on his way to Idaho to get some of those answers as to what evidence they have against him. Well, I appreciate you, Bree, coming on. Blue, Blue, did you have any last questions?
No, I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming on. I know you met him a long time ago. He was a sweet guy. And he probably was at that time, and he could change or it could not be him. We'll find out what the proof that they have on him and go from there. I mean, you just have to see what the truth is.
I do believe that if he is guilty, like I want to say this right now, if he is guilty, he deserves justice for the crimes. But I mean, there's just some things that are like off to me, but then there's also like, whoa, they found the DNA. But like the things that are off is if you look at the body cam, his car is super dirty. You would think after something so brutal that his car would be clean, or there would be their evidence in there, like their DNA. And so we're just gonna have to wait for that report that says like they found blood in his car.
Have any knives on him? I know up north a lot of people carry knives.
Thank you, Christy. I'm so sorry, you guys. Thanks. So, so graceful, I have to say. So what I was saying is I'm going to stop right there because I didn't want to trail off of the subject. I did want Bree to give her whole statement out. We're focusing right now on the time frame of the DeSales University, and she talks about that in there, and she gives her opinion on it. But I wanted to play the whole thing because she talks about within her inner circle in the community how they felt after BK was arrested. but I have a couple more things to show you just speaking on this time frame. So just to refresh your memory, like I just did with the sound off, we're talking about the paradox in the mainstream media versus what people actually have gone on record to say and what some of the documents or receipts that we have show us. So to think like that females got a warning before they were around him, I think that's kind of interesting. You know, I have this. So I have a program from his graduation. Mikey sent me. And I've redacted all the names. I'm showing you both of them just because I want you to see the whole program. And there he is right there. But going through all of this document, his graduating class was majority women. He worked in these really close, intimate settings with women. So one of the things when I was researching Dr. Ramsland's interview, I did find some videos from DeSales University online in their criminal justice program. They didn't have much, but they did have a couple. And the settings that these students work in are really close. Like it's not, I'm not saying that proves anything, but I am saying it does push back on the narrative that he had this inability to communicate or socially engage with women. And I didn't bring this up too, just because I don't have all the sources and it's not a firsthand account, but there was someone who went firsthand on the record, the last name Martinez, who said other places than Howard Bloom's book, that those two women at the pool party, the one with the pink hair and the one with the thigh tattoo, both freely gave Bryan his phone number. And it's just another little thing to add to what we're talking about, that maybe it's not as black and white, that he's, you know, got so many female problems or so many, that he's so awkward around females. But we're getting to the biggest story, which something that's been repeated since BK was arrested. I've heard this particular story, and I want to spend kind of the most time on it, breaking it down, because it wasn't until I actually went back to the source and listened firsthand to what the woman said that I actually gleaned more insight. But when you look at it at its surface, the next story I'm going to tell you seems like it's most damning. It seems like it shows the most about his character. So I'm going to first give you the mainstream media narrative, and then we're going to go right into the podcast and listen to what the lady actually said. It's in its totality. So I just realized my background is orange. That's better. All right, so I brought up this article many times. I think Jeremiah originally gave this to me. Hold on, let me put this banner up, and I can't find it. Okay, sorry about that. I had to go get it out of my email. Oops. Oh my gosh. I bought one thing from Johnny O, and I just get so many advertisements for this company. All right. So this is called Bryan Kohberger investigated as a teenager, school administrator reveals. A former high school administrator revealed an investigation carried out years ago into Bryan Kohberger about when he was a student, which ultimately doomed his enrollment in a law enforcement training program. Kohberger, a Pennsylvania native who had been doing doctoral studies at Washington State University, was arrested at his parents' home in late December and charged with the killings of 4 Idaho college students. The students, Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle, were all found stabbed to death on the morning of November 13th at a shared residence near their school at the University of Idaho-Moscow in Idaho. The home was only 8 miles from Kohberger's campus. An extensive FBI investigation utilized vehicle records and DNA evidence ultimately led to Kohberger becoming the prime suspect in the killings. In May, a grand jury indicted him on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felonious burglary. A judge overseeing his arraignment entered a not guilty plea on his behalf, as Kohberger refused to speak at the hearing. His trial is set to begin in October with prosecutors. This is a very old article, obviously. So this is down to what I'm getting at. Tanya Camilla Beers previously served as administrator for a vocational high school that Kohberger attended, with her duties including mental health services, student discipline, and Kohberger attended the vocational program of Pleasant Valley School District in eastern Pennsylvania during the sophomore and junior years of high school. Speaking with the Idaho Murders Modcast, she described the incident in which several female students lodged complaints against him, ultimately leading to his removal from the school's vocational law enforcement program. I do take trouble with the wording of this because there weren't multiple complaints. There was a group that came and made 1 complaint. So I just don't like the wording of that. A situation occurred where a complaint was made and the teacher reported it to me and said an investigation needed to be conducted. Carmela Beers explained. The other students were interviewed. Bryan was interviewed. And there comes a time when decisions have to be made, whether it's a decision the student wants or not, she continued. He was removed from the law enforcement program and transitioned to the HVAC program. And then at the end of the 11th grade year is when he decided not to return as a senior. Carmela Beers would not elaborate on what Kohberger had been accused of, but did note what had him removed from the program, when I look back now, makes sense. In response from an inquiry from Newsweek, the Pleasant Valley School District official declined to comment on the investigation, citing a need to respect the students' privacy. Kohberger ended up completing his high school education with online classes, later pursuing an undergraduate degree in psychology and a master's in criminology. There's so much to unpack with this. Like, it is not how they're presenting this to you right now. I wholly feel that they took the most salacious comment in here and they made that the last thing that Carmela Beers said. What had him removed from the program, when I look back now, makes sense. Short of something really awful, I can't believe she even put that out there and said that about somebody. Like, why wouldn't she just tell us what it was and let us, instead of having our imaginations fill in what that could be? However, if we listen to the actual podcast, we can eliminate a lot of things that it could have been. So let's just go ahead and listen. So the first part of it is there's going to be 2 segments. So the first 2.5 minutes are basically her talking about this incident, and it's the same tone as we just read in that article. But then when we get to the second part that we're going to listen to, it's about 3 minutes long. It's almost like she's giving, I don't think she did it intentionally, but she turns around, she almost gives what she thinks Bryan's defense would have been if he were there talking. So that's just my takeaway from it. So let's listen to both segments. And then afterwards, I'm going to bring you right back to Cassie, because this is the entire podcast, the episode that she did with Daniel. That's what it's about, is this time when they were both attending the vocational high school. So he was a junior and she was a senior. So it's all relevant, and I'll stop talking now. Just to remind you folks, this is on Spotify. It's the Idaho Massacre, and this episode is called "The Face of Fear."
Class extremely seriously. And so in that regard, it was evident that that was really something he was very interested in doing as a career. However, even though he was a leader in the class, that sometimes leaders don't always get the respect that they should.
At some point in Kohberger's junior year, there was an incident with other students. Says she can't elaborate about the specific incident because of legal reasons. Here's speaking with Jeff Shane.
Protective services and health occupations were the only two programs in our school where clearances were required to be, as a student, to be in those programs. So you were judged a little bit more carefully in those programs. Therefore, if you have an infraction that could potentially, as an adult in the field, be a big employment issue for you, then we would very seriously look at removing you from the program. So a situation occurred where a complaint was made, and the teacher reported it to me and said, this is not something we can have. An investigation needed to be conducted. Other students were interviewed. Bryan was interviewed. And, there comes a time when decisions have to be made, whether it's the decision the student wants or not.
It must be such a tough position
It's
for
horrible.
you to be in, because it's his, it's someone's dream.
It's horrible. Yeah, it is. And especially because by virtue of what I do with special education and guidance, like I said, I'm all about second chances. But and I recognize that these are still kids, but because of these two programs, we don't have a whole lot of latitude there and ability for forgiveness. However, with that said, and as you may know, it doesn't mean that you can't transition into another program that doesn't have the requirement of clearances. He was removed from protective services and transitioned into HVAC. And then at the end of that 11th grade year is when he decided not to return as a senior.
Do you remember what he was feeling like when that transition happened?
I believe he was going through other stuff that was not a part of what was happening at our school. So my feeling was that he was defeated, because it's the only thing he ever wanted in life.
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I was muted that whole time. What an idiot. Thank you, Christy. Gosh, I can't believe that I didn't get all of those points across. So the first thing I want to stress is that we're trying to figure out why we can't, but we have to kind of guess what could have made him leave this program. And some of the things that we might think of off the top of our heads would be maybe drug use. Maybe he got caught with drugs, but she clearly states if it were drugs. Whoa. She said that if it were drugs, he would have probably been kicked out of the program altogether. There wouldn't have been tolerance from that. And I'm like, okay, well, what else could it be? Like, what could indicate? She said it's something that made sense. What could make sense to this woman that would? Oh my God, my phone is blowing up. I'm gonna turn off the ringer. That to like a psychopath from him at 17 years old. And I just tried to think of all these things. Could it have been voyeurism? Could it have been exposure? It couldn't have been theft. He would have been kicked out of the program. But essentially, whatever it was benign enough for him to just get downgraded. He didn't have the police called on him. He didn't get kicked out of school. He didn't get any disciplinary action. He lost his clearance for that program and got moved down to HVAC. And I don't know what it was. And we can sit here and speculate, but that's really not fair. I mean, there is a reason. It's going to come out. And I'll let you hear the rest of what she has to say, because I think it kind of clears it up a little, or at least is thought-provoking. I think it's like a 2-minute segment, and she's basically speaking from Bryan's perspective, I think. And you don't see this in the mainstream media article. You only hear it when you read the podcast or listen to the podcast.
And you have it, and now that's falling through, but then something else that's going on in your life that's not even relevant to that is also causing angst. And so I think it was just a lot of defeat.
You wouldn't describe it as angry or upset. It was more just like he was sad.
Yeah. Yep. I don't think that maybe he necessarily grasped the depth and breadth of the issue at hand. So I think there was frustration as to not really understanding. I don't understand what the problem is. This is not a big deal, or, this didn't happen. It wasn't like an anger, like an explosive anger or anything at all like that. It was just like, seriously, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Did this happen a lot where students had to be pulled or switched or any of that?
It happened, but it didn't happen a lot, particularly in programs like protective services and health occupations, because those kids really had to fight to get into those programs, so to speak, because there's such a long waiting list. And if you're chosen, not to screw it up, because if you screw it up, you don't get a second chance, kind of thing. If you're removed in your sophomore year or whatever, you don't get to come back again in your junior year or your senior year. That's it. You're done.
I see. So is that the type of infraction that kids would get pulled for, like behavior or cheating or drugs or like drinking, or is that like, what are the types of infractions that would cause
to be removed from a program?
Yeah.
To be removed from a program, it has to be pretty severe. Again, the bar is pretty high when it comes to protective services and health. The level of expectation for behavior is held to a much higher standard there. But in the other programs, if it's a drug offense, then you're just out. If it's something that's really egregious, otherwise we let law enforcement handle it. You get suspended, you do your time, and you come back. But that kind of thing is not an option in a program like protective services, because again, in the field, you wouldn't be able to do that and still get your job back.
Knowing what allegedly we know now about what he did versus like what he wanted to become, how do you wrap your head around that?
It's interesting because ultimately and I have to be careful what I say, but like ultimately what had him removed from the program, when I look back on it now, makes sense. And I don't know, and that probably isn't clear for you at all.
No.
But the fact that he wanted law enforcement more than anything else in the world, if you look at it from just that perspective alone, not knowing what I know, then yeah, you'd be like, I can't, I'm so shocked. And in that respect, I am. But then I know another little piece, which is the piece that occurred at the school. And so then I'm like, But see, that makes sense. When I heard about the murders, it was actually the school guidance counselor that said, "Did you hear?" And I'm like, "What?" But she said to me, "Did you hear about Bryan?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." She said, "Turn on the news." And then I was like, "Oh my God." But with that said, I was shocked, but it made sense.
Let's stop here for a break. We'll be back in a moment.
Stop this. You guys, I am taken back by what she says. I hope you heard it all in its entirety. I mean, she says a lot, but there is a segment where she basically talks about Bryan saying, I don't get it. She said at first, she goes, "This isn't a big deal." And then she goes, "This didn't happen." So I wonder if there was a denial, but what could it be? What could it be that was so bad that he lost his clearance, but not bad enough that he didn't get kicked out of school, and not illegal that he had the police called on him? And in character analysis, same thing. He's under 18. So we wouldn't know his criminal record. But from what she just said, it sounded like they didn't report him to the police. Although that's a good point. If he did get reported to the police and she didn't mention it there, we wouldn't know. And I just want to say thank you so much, Cyber Ninja, for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate it. And so I had one more piece to this puzzle I wanted to show. There are airplanes flying all over my house. I'll shut the windows in a second. I am sure you can hear that, which is Bree's interview. And I'm going to go back to her talking about how she met Bryan. So she went to school, this same school with him. They only went to school together during this time period. So she only hung out with him really for a year, because she graduated and he was still a junior. And then when he came back, he did his senior year online. So it's kind of interesting that we're at this point. We have this administrator talking about Bryan, and now we can actually firsthand hear another female talk about her relationship with Bryan at this same time. It's just interesting. So I'm bringing back up my analysis of Drunk Turkey Show. I can't find it. Hold on. There we go. And we're going to go back to Cassie's first question. Actually, it's her second question. Going with Bree's interview. So now that I've set that up for you with the HVAC, I think what Bree has to say is going to fit into place. And we'll pull out some tap to talks as she's talking as well.
Collection. Thank you. I have over 2,000 of them.
My name is Funko Pops.
Ever wanting that?
I'm a specific person.
Nope. Never really talked about anything too intimate.
Gotcha.
One of the big questions in the chat is everybody wants to know what Triple C is.
Triple C, dang, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's like a step up from like Molly. He just ended up doing some heavy drugs, and I knew some of those people because a lot of people did those drugs on the bus to Votech. So a lot of people were like off their rocker at Votech, and it was just unsupervised. Like, I've watched somebody snort cocaine in the back of the bus, and like, we're in our senior year. I'm like, whoa, shouldn't we be doing this in our 20s?
Oh wow. And Votech, it was what, HVAC? Is that what it was?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was he a strict vegan? Was his diet that way back then?
I don't remember the veganism. I can't recall. No.
Okay. So he started taking some heavy drugs. How long, Did you know, did it take?
I'm just going to stop right there because I think this clears up what we were just talking about. So Jeremiah points out his senior year was online, wasn't he? I could be wrong. Now that might be the detail that kind of fixes this timeline issue. So Bree says senior year. She must have been talking about her senior year, BK's junior year, and where he was in the vocational part. So it looks like halfway through his junior year is when he changed into the HVAC program. And then Jeremiah is right. I've heard this too. I need to verify this. Where did I put it? But he did do his senior year online, I believe. So that would make sense in the time frame, or at least that kind of gives us an idea of what the time frame could possibly be. So, let's continue.
For you to notice a change in him after he started to take those drugs?
Well, I remember just party after party, like he would just like get weirder and weirder and then like disappear for a little bit. And I think the last party that like we actually were at together, we were at my friend's house, and
okay, so I'm calling this segment the cornfield, and I think that this is, of all the parts of the interview, I gleaned the most information from this story. I'm going to bring up the tap to talks in this instance, so I'll let her get through the whole story. And then I'm going to bring. We're not going to listen to the cornfield story because it's very interesting, but it's not relevant to what we're talking about. I skipped forward. This is what we're going to listen to.
Special guest. We have somebody who was friends at one point with Bryan Kohberger, the accused in the IDAHO4 incident. Her name is Bree. She'll be coming in. Bree, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight? Are you drinking with us?
I am drinking. I'm actually going to have Screwball and some Mason.
Nice, nice. So Big Blue's missing out tonight.
Yeah.
We'll definitely look at it. If it's appropriate and she's okay answering it, then she will, but we're not going to force any questions. So my first question is, when did you meet Bryan and how did you meet him?
I met Bryan in high school, and we actually, we went to VOTEC together, but we didn't like officially meet until I ended up throwing a banger with my best friend at her house.
Got you. And so he was at the party?
He was, yeah.
Okay. Was he a party guy? Did he go to parties?
I don't necessarily think he was a party guy, but I can say that Bryan, anytime we had like a little soiree or a get together, he was there, but he was very selective with his friends. So I don't think that he went to many parties other than just his few friends here or there where he knew it was a safe place for him.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. She's quintessential PA girl. I think one of the cutest things is when somebody recognizes her for her Hello Kitty collection. It's so cute. It's interesting that you guys haven't seen this before. I've had 2 people in the chat say that so far. And Jeremiah says, so he doesn't sound like a social outcast. No, there are some fascinating things she said that I might not have known about until I read that tap to talk, though. And we'll start painting a closer picture. I've got some pretty detailed stuff, but.
Got you. And when you say a safe place for him, what do you mean by that? Like, did he find places not to be safe for him? Was he? What does that mean?
I do think Bryan was bullied in high school. I've never seen it, but we went to 2 schools. We went to our high school, and then half of the day we went to our vocational school. And in our vocational school, there were 5 to 6 other high schools. And with Bryan being the quiet guy that he was and very like to himself kind of guy, I don't foresee him not being bullied.
Got you. Understood. Now, were you guys in the same grade, or was he, a grade ahead of you guys, or?
He was a grade below me.
Got you. So how long did you know?
Before we hear this segment because it's kind of out of place. I wish this was at the end of the interview, so it was chronological, but this is sort of towards where their relationship began to deteriorate. I'm not going to show you, I'm not going to read the whole article, but I want to point this out to you. I'm bringing up the HVAC. This article I brought up before, Jeremiah, who's in the chat, is the one who sent this to me, and it is just a really fascinating. We read this article a lot, obviously. Let me skip through it. And is that, hold on, is this where we left off before? Let me look. I think it is.
Anything too intimate.
So one of the big questions in the chat is everybody wants to know what Triple C is.
Okay, that's it. All right, that's the end of what I wanted to show you for Bree. So let me take this down. I hope you guys gleaned some new pieces of insight from this. I just want to show you the photographs that I've never showed you before. And I'll be honest, I haven't seen these before. And I feel like I've seen everything sometimes. And I never actually saw his listing. So this is Wasu. And these are the different, let me take this comment down by Carla. These are the different TAs that he worked with, all female. And then we have the program from his graduating class. Again, surrounded and working closely with women at the same time where that article came out. So it's not that I know what's going on. I just see some information. I want to give it to you. And I feel like when we started scratching the surface and looking deeper into some of these writings, I do feel like, you know, there is a paradox between what I've been told in the media and what actually is there. Now, I will give one caveat. The case is gagged, sealed, and redacted. So people that might have been talking to the media and giving information at the beginning might now not be able to speak. And so we aren't able, or maybe they had to say something anonymously because they were sealed by the gag order. So I don't know, but this is what we have. And I just think that it's interesting when you look at it in its totality. So anyway, that's all I had for the female paradox segment. And I have another one for you now, which I think is going to spark your interest, hopefully just as much, because I've already seen one comment about it in the chat, which is, I have a couple of them here, but I want to talk about the water tower really quickly. And then after that, we're going to talk about WSU Mom Kim, because she's going live this afternoon. And I just thought it would be, I thought we'd take a moment to just talk about why she's going live, because I have a soundbite that I can play you from Kim. So let me start with this water tower soundbite. And where I came up with this idea for the segment is during my interview with Michael Adario, which I did on Thursday. During that research, I kept hearing him talk about different things he observed when it comes to cameras, but specifically the water tower. And I asked him about it, and I'd like you to hear his answer. I also asked him, this is an interesting soundbite, because I also asked him in this, if he could explain to my audience what happened when he's a professional, he's a visual artist and professional photographer, and he went to go take a picture of that kind of iconic photograph we remember at the beginning of the crime with the shoes hanging from their laces off the power lines. And he discovered something very odd when he got to the scene. So he's going to tell both stories in this soundbite. Let me pull that up. I tried to edit it a little before. Vehicle number 1. as mentioned in the PCA. Suspect vehicle number 1, as mentioned in the PCA. Sorry. Many people have speculated which cameras might have caught suspect vehicle number 1, as mentioned in the PCA. I really liked your theory about possible camera placement, particularly because Ann Taylor has mentioned the same location during hearings. So could you please speculate to my audience your thoughts about possible camera location?
Well, I think there was a camera, the pole camera, at the King Queen intersection. There was one at Linda Lane in the apartments. If you look at my one film, you'll see me drive through the whole complex, and that will give you an idea of how the complex is set up. The complex is very crowded. It must be a horror story in the snow, because somebody did not figure this place out right. It looks like you just you go around. There's only one entrance and exit for the complex. That's at the Taylor King Road. That's the only way you can get in or out. So it almost looks like to me that whoever was driving around, they said that was pulling back and forth, going around, pulling into the parking lot, might have been confused with the address, because the address is very confusing. They claim in the affidavit that that they can see the car pull in to the parking lot in front of 1122 King Road house. Well, there's no camera that would show that, because other than the ones that they're not claiming are up. I mean, there's only two cameras that they claim right now. It's the one on the house on the side, and there's the Linda Lane. So how did they know that this car pulled into the parking lot? The only way they could know that is if they had a camera in the water tower. And because there is an area by the water tower that is blurred. And I actually got that from Crime Circus. He was the one that put that up, and I had missed that, but he put that up. And if you go to that area and spin around and look, and this is what I think they're pointing to right now in this shot. If you go to that area and spin around, it's a direct shot of 1122 King Road. You look right in the front door. And before they did the tree removal, it was totally overgrown, totally obscured. Once they did the tree removal, you'll see that it looks right into it. It's very, very suspect.
Well, it's interesting, and I don't know why I never thought about the water tower, but it's even more interesting that I'll have to go back and see exactly how AT references that in the hearing, but I thought it was really fascinating when I heard you say that. Sorry, muted. Quick question. What do you guys think about that? I saw someone say something about the light bulb camera, and of course I've reported on what I think are photographs of the 712 camera. Let me show you a picture of that real quick. I think I have one right here. So there is let me get that comment down. So there are a lot of speculations about what the camera was that saw him turning around. But for someone who was out there and had a whole grasp on the things, I thought it was an interesting take. And I'm going to keep playing because now we're going to hear about the shoelaces. So just to put this into context, the whole interview that I have with Michael Adario is we're talking about phone call interceptors, for example, a Pegasus or a Stingray system. And these are used I mean, there's not really a good way of explaining it other than saying they're kind of spy equipment. It kind of filters what goes from your cell phone to the tower or the GPS. It catches it, and they can be either mounted on something stationary, or they can be small enough, like like Cy Ray mentioned. So Cy Ray mentioned these stingrays in a hearing recently, and he said that it was in the context of being kept in some sort of police van or some sort of surveillance vehicle. But that's what Michael's talking about when you hear the next segment about the shoelaces. I had to set it up, or you're not going to quite know what he's trying to tell you. Pause it.
Thank you.
So could you explain to my audience this is also something I found really interesting. I heard you saying, and I want to definitely take it to my audience, but, we all remember the this up because maybe, so he was saying we're looking for that third camera. We have the 2 known cameras, and when he was saying about parking, he said that he was talking about the 3-point turn. He was trying to say which camera caught the 3-point turn, and he made a remark. He goes, it's almost like the car was looking for a place to park. He was speculating. He didn't say that it was in the PCA. I think that's what you're talking about, character analysis. Photograph of the sneakers that were hanging on the power lines when we first learned about the crime at 1122 King Road. You actually tried to take a photograph of those sneakers when you went to Moscow. Could you please tell my audience what you found when you went to that location?
Well, I wanted to photograph the house, and I had waited and waited, and it came to like in November, and there was rumors that they were going to tear the house down. So I did some work. I went to I wanted to photograph Timber Gulch in Eastern Oregon, and I didn't want to get in this area if it snowed, because I know I would have been, stranded in the middle of nowhere. So I went in like early November, and I wanted to see if the pole camera was up there, if I could see something. And there was something on the net. Somebody posted something, and I cannot find it now. Was that they were going to tighten the wires. They had posted that the wires were sagging, and they were going to tighten the wires. So I knew, that was it. So I had gone to the area. The sneakers were gone. This was November 7th, 2023. And I took a shot of the area where I believe that there was something that the pole camera or the Stingray was. And I did find 2 cables that were unattached. That's the only thing I found, because I believe whoever went there and took these sagging wires, took the pole cam and the Stingray out, because they had already talked about knocking the house down. So I think they wanted to get that out of there. Speculation, but there were 2 cables, and that's in my film, where you can see I did red circles around it where the cables are just hanging, just loosely, like. So it could have been maybe somebody didn't get cable TV anymore, or it could have been that there was a pole camera there and they took it out because it was no longer needed. And but everything points to my premise. I believe that house was under surveillance, and it had been for some time. What the police say, if the house was targeted, if the people were targeted, they didn't know. And even using that word targeted, and passion, it was a passion kill. I think that house, and there's published reports that party house was doing like a trap house. So it might have not been the victims. It could have been somebody else or somebody prior, or it could have been a bad address. But I think that there was definitely some dealing going on there, and I think we'll find out about it. It's going to be a hard pill to swallow if that's true. But and I don't understand how Bryan. I still don't know how he fits into it. But so far, I don't think they have a case. I think the case is falling apart. So we shall see.
Judge watches, yeah. Yes, we shall. We shall see. I mean, so the first thing I'm going to say, I don't know where the Bridgewater Triangle is coming up, but Miss Anonymous and I are both from the greater Boston area, and I don't know what's sparking this conversation, but I know she's talking about it because this word, the pugwudgies, it's only in one place. But I was recently there. I'm honestly frightened to go into the Bridgewater Triangle. Like I'm frightened, for the haunted part of it, but it also seems like that's where people are up to no good too. But it's like a energy vortex. We've talked about it a lot on this channel. I just think it's funny that you guys are talking about it. It's very close to me and Miss Anonymous. Jeff says, I realize his answer doesn't sound sus to everyone. Does to me. I think that when you're talking about the stingray, I think part of it too, I tried to put this into context, but he was also there to give some theories on what parallel construction is. I'm just getting text messages. It keeps getting me scared that I'm muted. I'm not there where I've seen anything that makes me think that this was a trap house or a drug house, but I certainly am open to anyone's opinions, and I'm never going to be able to analyze them if I don't listen to them, all the way. And he had so much valuable information with the stingray and how they're installed and what they look like when they're not installed and how they appear on Google Maps. He just kind of is filling in the blanks with the different thoughts he has. Mute PST. Yeah, that would make a great t-shirt. I actually might put that in my store. Anyway, I thought I'd show this segment because it was just recently, and the entire interview is amazing, and he has some great music and 3 amazing videos. So either go visit Michael's channel or please check out the interview that he did on Thursday here. And I just have one more thing to show you guys. Well, 2 more things. 3 more things, actually. They're all the same thing, though. Let me... All right, so I just want to take you to my community tab. So the big thing I was posting about, WSU Mom Kim was supposed to go live on the 20th, but she couldn't. She had some technical difficulties. So she's going to be going live today. And that's going to be at noon Pacific Standard Time, which is 3 p.m. New York time or Eastern Standard Time that we go by here. And I'm just going to read you this post. Good morning. I apologize. I have to change today's live to Monday at noon. The honest reason, I don't know how to do a live. I assumed it was a no-brainer. I was incorrect. LOL. Not really funny. I despise changing plans when others are involved, and Swamp Rose, you mentioned it and posted it and supported me. You didn't let me down at all, but she said you let me down. You didn't let me down. It happens all the time. And she said she's sorry. I weighed doing it and muddling through half a blah, 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 blah versus having a friend help me. She has Monday at noon available. Thank you so much, Swamp Rose. I hope you can join me. And again, I apologize, even wearing the same thing on my thumb. I just want to bring this to you guys' attention that she's going to be doing her live stream today. And it's going to be coming on about 3 hours and 15 minutes. When she creates the live, I'll forward it to the channel so you can watch it. And I will 100% be there. But because Kim is going live, we've had a lot of questions in the comment section. And one of them is about Kim and if she is real or not. People ask it in different ways, but that's what people are asking is Kim really a real character? Because we have been burnt with so many trolls. We've also been burnt with fake leaked information on at least 2 occasions. So it's everybody's initial reaction is to not believe someone when they come forward. But me personally, I've interviewed Kim and I went to the source of how she was vetted. So after I interviewed her, I didn't even know if I should keep the interview up. I didn't do any vetting. She just showed up on my live stream. So I contacted the Drunk Turkey Show and Daniel explained his entire vetting process to me. And then he was nice enough to actually come on my show and explain the vetting process. So I have this video on my channel called Who is WSU Mom Kim? And like the first 2 minutes of it is Daniel explaining to us how he verified who Kim was. And he's not saying he vetted her story. He's saying he verified her identity. So let's listen to what he has to say.
So you were saying about Kim. What's going on with Kim? I think I seen her in the live chat. How you doing, Kim? It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Kim. I don't know. What I was saying is originally when I had interviewed Kim, a lot of people had questions and I never really got a chance to vet Kim. She was just a random guest on my show. And so I reached out to you, and that's actually how we started talking. Is I was asking you how you knew Kim, and just so I could have her back on my show and know a little bit more about her. And so I didn't know she'd be in the live chat because I haven't talked to her in a while, but I thought we'd show that video. And I have like they're about like 2 or 3 minute clips I wanted to get your reaction to. She talks about a couple different topics. And so I figured it'd be a good way to end our segment since we had about 10, 15 minutes more to go.
Yeah, yeah. Let's do this. Steeler fan says it's Pam.
Pam?
Oh man, I'm so bad with names. That's funny.
Pam.
I called Kim Pam once. Long story short, I own a couple businesses, and one of my customers or clients is named Pam. And so I had just talked to Pam and Troy before I got on the show. And so I called her Pam, not thinking about it. And so I wasn't the only one. I came out on Publicly Buzz and they called her Pam too. So I was like, you see, it's not just me. But I'm bad with names. I hate it. But let's watch.
Start a new rumor.
Oh, dude, it was a conspiracy across the world. I think people thought she was my wife. I was like, man, you're crazy. Not because like if anything like that, but like my wife's been on the show. Like you've seen her, you've heard her voice. Come on now. You know what I'm saying? So it's crazy.
Yeah, I think you'd be a little more creative than your wife. So
yeah.
All right, let me put this. So this first clip we're gonna listen. It's just only 1.5 minutes, and then I'm gonna skip forward because we kind of. All right, body is interesting. What he's been saying is so close to the info that I was given early on, with the exception of Ethan.
I've seen his stuff.
Sorry.
Kim, thank you so much for coming on.
It really
Like,
isn't.
just like
It's fine. I don't care. Nobody has to believe me. I know that I'm not lying and want to be wrong with a lot of the things I've known. And if said for I feel like the right reasons. Now, I should have done it differently, obviously. But I didn't, and that's just where we are. Right? That's just where, you learn, unfortunately, But at the end of the day, I think we all have the same goal.
But it would be worse though if you took what you know and just kept it to yourself. I mean, I think it's, and that's true with everybody. I mean, that's why I think it's, just because we want to hear everything so that we can process everything and figure out what's the most plausible, what's possible. And
right. And it was alarming to discover that time delay. Not that my daughter didn't tell me. I totally get it. I would have packed them up so lickety split they would have been home that day. because we were there. It was Parents Weekend. Right? We had been told, and that's likely why they didn't tell us any of the parents at either school until later. Well, like right before they put out the shelter in place, and then like within 10 minutes it was gone, and it was, you're free to go, everybody's safe. I'm like, did they catch it? Like, and they didn't even they hadn't even caught him. They couldn't tell us who, why, what, where. They could only tell us nothing, and then, but they were safe. It was targeted, or the house was targeted, which now it's
I'm going to pause right there, because the story that she's telling, I mean, I don't want to, obviously I don't want to play Kim's whole interview, but just kind of telling the origins of what her story is. And for those who maybe don't know WSU Mom Kim, who are watching, she has a story about her daughter's Snapchats the morning at 10 a.m. the morning of November 13th, 2022. And I'm just
I wouldn't say that.
All right.
So I have my interview with her recorded, and I think she's Kim's a great person. I don't think she's lying. But it very well could have been Snapchat. But when Kim supposedly found this out. Well, let me start off in the beginning. When I said I vetted Kim, maybe I used the wrong term. I probably should have said I verified who she was. All right. So she is who she says she is. Her name is Kim. She has a daughter and a son that both attended WSU. Her daughter had a friend who was dating a person who attended the University of Idaho. And so all those things ended up being true, and the way I figured and found those things out was, she'd contact me on the show and she talked and said some things. And I said, yeah, let's talk off air because some of the things are a little bit out there. And, she gave me a name of the athlete that her daughter's best friend was dating or is dating. I don't know if there still are or not. And she just gave me a first name, last initial, and she wasn't even sure about it. She gave me the name of her daughter and the name of her daughter's best friend. And so what I did was I went through the University of Idaho and I found a guy that I thought was the person that she was referring to. He fit what she had told me about him and the sports that he had played. And so I looked up him through his Facebook, which had been around since like 2014 or something like that. So it's not something new. And I found where he was in a relationship with somebody who had the same first name as the person that Kim stated that her daughter was friends with. Now, again, all I had was first names. I didn't even have last names at this point. And so I had Kim's last name because, well, she called the show and her last name came up on my caller ID. So I then went and I grabbed,
that wasn't the one.
I went through that person's friends list, and it didn't take very long, and pictures to find Kim's daughter. And I was like, all right. And I clicked on Kim's daughter's profile, and sure enough, guess who her mom is? And all these profiles were created and relationships were gotten into well before the murders, like years before. And so it's not like somebody created these fake profiles all of a sudden out of nowhere in 2022. I mean, some of them were as far dated back as like 2014 or 2016, 17, stuff like that is when they were created. And there's pictures there of family pictures throughout time with dates on them. So yeah, I have no doubt whatsoever that Kim is Kim. Her story, I don't know how much of it is accurate.
I think that's where I want to stop, because I relied on somebody else. I relied on somebody else's vetting process, and I trusted Daniel, and that's why I definitely support Kim still. And well, instinctually, I always liked Kim. I obviously made her a moderator, but he draws the line. He's saying, I vetted the person. I didn't verify the story. It's not about what she's saying now. It's about making sure that I've got a real person and not a random troll interjecting themselves, So anyway, I wanted to show that just because we have Kim's interview coming up. If you want to watch my interview with Kim, I highly recommend it. In fact, I'll comment it down below if you want a refresher about some of the things that Kim was talking about. I thought it was a really good interview because we we sort of broke down when she was talking, and she'd say something. I say, okay, is this firsthand knowledge? Is this rumor? Is this word on the street? Or is this something you heard from the ISP officer? Because she was assigned an ISP officer. And she really broke that down in my interview, and it made things a lot clearer. Like everything she talked about, she would explain the origins of where it came from. So I thought, I mean, I'm not trying to say I had the best Kim interview, but I do feel I had the best Kim interview. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think it'd be great if you watch that. If you want to watch something before she goes live, that's a great one to watch. She has a good interview from Super Bowl weekend on Daniel's channel, and that was a pretty good interview too. So, and then you, if you want to see this is actually an entire live stream. This is actually this is almost a 30-minute video that we just talk about Kim and Daniel, and I don't want to say Daniel's relationship with her, but the different aspects of Kim's story. I'm not talking really well now. It's probably time for me to end the live stream. Yeah, so that's really all I have for today. I just had these 3 segments, and I really appreciate that we have such an active chat and that you guys showed up at the live stream today. Please leave your comments below. I want to know a few things. I want to know, do you feel that there's a paradox in what the mainstream has told us about Bryan's general relationship to women and what we've actually seen in the documents? Or do you think that I'm interpreting this wrong? You know, do you think that it all fits in the profile well? Other questions. What do you think about this extra camera? Do you think that it was the Ring doorbell cam? Do you think it was the 712 building? Do you think it was the water tower, like Michael Adario mentioned? And then the shoelaces, when they tighten the wires and they actually took down that wire. Do you think it's possible they were using some sort of phone call interceptors in surveilling that area? If you've heard that theory, what do you think? I mean, we definitely you have WASU having Project Sea Glass just 8 minutes, 8 minutes north of this campus. You can ask Miss Anonymous about that. And that's basically the use of stingrays and interceptors. So I'd love to know that. And then just lastly, whatever you feel about Kim, it would be nice. She's a part of our true crime community. Let's just stop in and see what she has to say. I've linked her channel in the community tab. I guess I can link it below. So just, please make sure to stop by and give Kim some support today. And other than that, I'll play you an outro, and thank you for showing up today.
don't